I can see you there. Glad you could join me today. I've tackled this beast for over 5 years now, and let me tell you, it is a big one. Lucky for you, today I'm going to share all its learnings for you in this 1 hour session. So pick up your weapon, your pencil, or your stylus, and join me today as we fight this mighty beast. We are going to study the structure of hands first, then draw some realistic hands from reference, and then we are going to do a bit of cartoony hands and some variation in hands too. So by the end of the session, you'll be ready to tackle some more of your own. So let's first start with structure of hand. So this is what a lot of people find difficult in drawing. But before that, you need to practice drawing some 3D shapes, and we'll start with the basic the front of hand that you're seeing here. And since everyone has hands, is the best reference to draw from any gesture. There are like unlimited gestures and poses you can draw of hands. Let us first break down the hand. You can see this palm that I've drawn and I've broken down into the structure, but I'm not exactly copying that. So first we begin with this rectangle. It's a bit squashed from the vertical side. This is our main palm. Then on this palm we have 3 pads. So there is a pad here, there's a pad here, and there's a pad which covers the knuckles here. So these 3 pads are very important, and they can shift, they can squash and stretch. So this is what we will mark first. So we have this first pad, we have second pad, and this pad which forms the knuckles, 4 knuckles. So these are the 3 pads, and from this pad it forms this triangular shape in the center. From this we have the thumb extension. So this is just this angled line that you see here, and from that you have the thumb. Now you can draw, if you measure your thumb, this can vary, but it ends somewhere here. So if you outstretch the thumb, this and this is mostly equal, so you can adjust to that. If this thumb closes, don't draw this, but if this thumb closes, it overlaps here. Now the proportions of this hand, if you were to draw the fingers, these are your knuckles here. If you were to take this distance, and this is your knuckle, so this distance, if you were to invert it this way, so that is how long your fingers are. So basically from here till here is same as from here till here. This is how long your middle finger is. Okay, so let's just draw the middle finger for now. So this distance is equal to this distance. Okay, now the other fingers form this arc. Now this arc starts here and goes narrower on the little finger side. So if we were to continue for the other fingers, we will draw this slightly slanted lines. I'm drawing the fingers close together. Here you see them apart, but drawing them close together, you see this 2 slanted lines. So we have this first finger, the index finger, then the middle finger, then the ring finger, and the little finger. So remember that all the fingers follow this arc. Now if I were to draw this in perspective, maybe it will be a bit difficult for you right now, but if you draw a sphere, so it's just a circle with some contour lines this way and this way. If this is connected to a cylinder, so we have an ellipse here, another ellipse here, and this is our cylinder. So this shape is basically a finger has this circular ball joints and this straight cylindrical shapes, and this pattern repeats and it goes smaller and smaller. So this is my first sphere and cylinder. If I connect another sphere and cylinder to it, this is my second, and I connect another sphere, and every time I'm going a bit smaller, and cylinder. So this is basically how your finger is structured. Now why is this important? Because if you break anything down to its 3D shapes, 3D forms, then you can easily rotate them in space. For now, just try to follow. So this is the structure. On top of it, if I were to draw my finger in another layer, now you have to remember that the top dips down. If you see, this is the finger. So the top, the arches dip down. If you bend, these are more straighter, and the down, they bulge because when you're bending, the skin squashes. So you can draw these bulges 1, 2, and 3, and the top is straighter than that, and your tip of the finger is the top is always straight and the round is curved because of the nail. So this is basically the structure of the finger. So if this same pattern you can repeat in perspective, if I have to draw this finger this way, you have to repeat the same pattern. So I'm starting with a sphere, then I draw this cylinder, then I draw another sphere connected, and the cylinder, and the sphere and the cylinder. This is how you can draw fingers in perspective. And since these, when our finger bends, you get these creases, can add these creases. But this is just to explain the structure. We'll be drawing mostly from reference today, so don't worry about rotating fingers. So now let me get my realistic references here. We drew the fingers clubbed together. Here we have a reference. I'm drawing this one. Here we have a reference of them apart. Let me break this down. I always draw the structure first so that I get the proportions correct, and then I draw the actual lines. So I start with the box shape, and you can mark your pads on it. I'm marking my thumb here. Never draw very straight lines. When you're drawing organic things, try to find these arcs. So always think about whether this arc is towards the left or right, and that will make it look more organic. So this is my thumb here. Now, as I said, the length of the middle finger. Okay, I'll mark the padding for now. You can observe here now from this reference, this length is equal to, you can leave the knuckle out, this length is equal to this, the length of the middle finger. The middle finger is always mostly aligned to the center of the palm. I'll get to that. I actually did not draw the wrist in the first one. So just to specify where the wrist is, the wrist is not at the center here. If you observe, it is in line with the middle finger and it is away from the thumb. So you get this edge here and the wrist is aligned to the outer edge. Okay, so it's off center in this direction, away from the thumb. So here if we draw from the reference, so always when you're practicing hands, remember to add the wrist. Now I'll add the fingers. The important thing to note in this exercise is the proportions. You can mark your arc here if you want to get it precise. Now when your thumb is outstretched like this, like when your thumb is closed, you get this edge, but when it's outstretched, there's no need to draw this bulge here. So the only lines that we need to darken are the outer edges here. I'm using the pencil only this time. We are just copying here. Now if we turn off our layer below, this will look very flat. To improve that, we'll add some lines. So since the thumb is outstretched, we won't draw this line, but we'll draw this line. Okay, and then we draw some lines here, and maybe we draw slightly these lines and the joints. This is our palm from reference. The fist is another important gesture. So here is my reference, and this is what I'll be drawing next. So for the fist, again we start with our same. I'll draw in line with this. So we'll start with the same base shape first, and this time, since the thumb is holding, if you notice, we have this very straight edges here, 1, 2 and 3, which you see in the reference also. So this is 1, this is 2 and this is 3. And you can see this bulge clearly. Next, for the fingers, I will club them together into this shape that I see from the reference. And the wrist goes down here, aligned to the outer edge. Now let's break down these fingers into the 4. 1, 2, 3. If you notice, I have used a lot of straight lines. So it's good to, get the shape right with the straight lines. Now I'll go along with it, marking the main black lines. Starting with the thumb. Try to add slight curves, because this is an organic structure. Maybe I'll add some shading here, so this is in darkness. Adding this tiny light information will, make your drawing better. Let's draw this gesture here, the pointing finger. Now the thumb is outstretched, one finger is outstretched and the rest are together. So let's try to draw that. I will start with my basic shape again. This need not be a rectangle, you can use some inclined lines, and this is the extension for the thumb. I'm trying to draw it in the same proportion as these previous hands. Now these, okay, I'll draw the straight finger first, and the rest of the fingers are overlapping this. I'll club them together. Make sure your drawing looks like the reference. Split these fingers into 3. And the thumb, maybe it's a bit more tapered. Okay, let's darken this. Adding the small arcs. makes it look more organic. Make sure you're breaking apart these fingers into individual curved lines. Now let's mark these tiny creases on the finger and even the thumb. And then the darkness here. I'm following these shading lines along with the curvature. So there are no straight lines. I'm keeping them a bit curved. It enhances the 3D-ness. Okay, let's draw the hand from the other side. Okay, I'm seeing my own hand here. To draw it from the other side, again, you start with the base. Extend the thumb. Draw this same distance on top. This is actually the main proportion that we need to understand. The knuckle comes here. So this distance is the same as the finger, the middle finger. And then you draw this arc and you draw the other fingers, which go narrow in the tip. And then our wrist goes away from the thumb. So my wrist is here. Now what changes in this other side is we don't have these pads here. What we have is some lines to depict these veins and then some knuckle definition. So first of all, I will just mark these fingers. And maybe we can draw the nails by just this tiny line. I don't normally draw nails in my cartoon characters, but that's where the nails are. And the knuckles, mostly the middle finger knuckle is prominent. So you can show this by these two lines. That adds some definition. And the thumb, always remember these straight lines. Where it joins the wrist, this is a straight line, and then the thumb is sort of this arc. Maybe the little finger needs to be smaller still. Okay, there's your hand from the other side. Now let's just use the reference because it becomes more clearer. I just wanted to draw from the other side. Let us draw something more difficult. Let's draw these this hand with the thumb over the hand. So this time we were drawing the complete rectangle here. Now if this is closed, the thumb comes overlapping. So this actually, it will be beneficial if we just draw the padding, the thumb padding here. We start with this. And drawing from the reference, this is the shape that I'm seeing here, and the thumb is going right across, touching the other edge. Okay, if you see from the reference, this is what I am observing. And let's draw the arc for the fingers here. Let's draw the middle finger. I'm mostly reducing the fingers to just rectangles which are tapered in the end. The fourth finger is not really visible. I can see some edge happening here. And then the wrist. is here. Points to note is this arc happening here, and your thumb touches this edge. Okay, let's darken the lines. I'm constantly looking at the reference for comparison. Now here I'll draw the line up till here because I need to break it somewhere. I'm adding this curve so that you see this padding getting squashed. Let's draw the wrinkles. And I'm adding some shading. I'm only adding shading where it's like the contact is the darkest. So I'm not adding shading to these fingers. Just to show the overlap, the shading helps. Okay, here this edge is pretty straight and here this is curved. So now we'll draw this one, which is the back of the hand, and also there's some differentiation in the fingers. So if you notice, I don't just start drawing the outline like so. I could easily do that, but that breaks the, your structure needs to be good, and to maintain the proportions, you have to start with the building blocks. So that's why I start with this center palm, the behind of the palm, then add this wrist. Then I'll add the thumb, but the thumb has this extension here. So this extension also covers the fact that your thumb, your wrist is on the other side. So this triangle is always present. Here also you notice this triangle. This is the extension I'm talking about. Now the thumb comes till here. I'm marking the proportions as I go. And these fingers, this is the first joint, and the other fingers are hidden. Then the second and the third club together maybe, and this is crossing. So to break this silhouette, you need to show this so that you know that it is overlapping. Now at this point, if there's some issues in the proportions, I can correct them. I'll just mark the knuckles here. So the knuckles are these round things, and in your final lines, you need to show the slight bulges. Okay, let's darken the important lines. Here I want to show this bulge, so I'm adding this slight bulge here, and then it goes behind. Here also, you see this tiny line, it shows the overlap, and I can add these two lines for the bulges for the knuckles. And finishing the fingers. Now this fingers behind I can completely darken, and I'll add some shading here also. And let's draw the thumb. study these arcs. So the thumb has a tip here and a round area here. When things overlap, like this thumb is getting overlapped, like the thumb is overlapping the wrist, so you can add this small line and that just brings it forward. I'll add the nail here. Let's draw a bit extended one here, like this, the first one. So I'm going to keep it the same proportions as this one. I draw it below here. I'm starting with this oval shape for the bulge and the palm, and the wrist is from the side this time. Okay, so I started with the oval, and since we are looking at this from the side, the thumb extension is here, and there's a bulge here, and the wrist connects here. So from the side also, if you see, the wrist is at the top edge, so you have the straight edge here, and the padding comes bulging downwards. So the wrist is attached on the top of the hand. So let's mark the thumb here. I'm checking the proportions. So the thumb is the same distance outstretched. It's all about measuring your references and keeping them in proportion. Now this straight finger is mostly straight, and I'm checking the proportion here. You see this straight line. I just marked that straight line, and then I will draw my first finger, which ends here. Okay, the two main fingers are done. Now the other fingers, again, if you turn your fingers, they always open up in an arc. So if I mark my last finger here and mark this arc, this is what the fingers are following. So let's draw the last finger, middle. So if you get the arc right, here you see this negative space forming here. It's an opening here that helps in differentiating the different fingers. Remember to add that. Now I notice this is still a bit short, just extending it. Okay, this was a difficult gesture. Are you able to get it? Now even if you see that this is a straight line, don't draw a straight line. You see it's broken by these knuckles here. So I can draw lines here. Then this bulge of the knuckle. And as fingers go, there's a rounded side and a straight side. So this is my knuckle here, and then the three divisions. So as long as you're adding these curves, it adds a bit of character to the fingers. Then the thumb goes here. We are looking at it from the top, so the shape is also symmetric. And then there's a bulge here and the wrist here overlapping. And I'm going to darken the other fingers. Remember this shape, the bulges. I'm adding curved lines for the shading. Straight lines on the top of the fingers and bulges on the bottom since they are a bit squished when they're folding. Okay, we are learning how to draw in proportion from these references. Okay, let's draw one more before we go to cartoons. This is a good one. You're drawing this first one about. So I'm first starting with this shape. This is what I'm seeing. This is this shape, the palm. And now with this extension for the thumb. Now this is difficult because it's in perspective again, and the wrist goes from here. So this is your wrist joint. So at this stage only check these proportions. So your wrist joint is here and this is larger. So if this is this much, this is this much. Okay, it's tapered till the wrist. And I'm adding a thumb. The thumb extension is equal to this. Okay, this distance and this distance is equal. Try to observe the reference. Now again, as I was saying in the previous ones, if you draw this arc from the thumb, the fingers follow a different arc here, which is somewhere here. Still feels longer. So this time, think of the gesture. Since this is outstretched upwards, so if you think about these lines, you're following these arcs now. Okay, everything should be in arcs. So this just the gesture that I'm showing. So starting from the wrist, these arcs are curving upwards. So considering that, the first finger will be somewhere here. Then the second and the third are close together. And the fourth is a bit outstretched. They follow this arc so that if one finger is going out of the line, just bring it down. Let's darken the lines now. I'm starting with the thumb. Notice the taper and a slight webbing in the joint. There's a bulge here, goes in. And here is the end of the bone, the hand bone. Follow the curvature of the finger. It is outstretched, bending upwards. You should make You're still familiar with this finger shape, the first shape that we practice here. So it's, your fingers need to be this way with 3 joints. Just draw the nails. I just give the hint of the nails, not really drawing. And then to add detail, we'll draw the knuckle definition here. I still feel this hand is a bit more stretched. Just fixing that quickly. That's better. Anyway, that is your gesture. Let's do more. I see a difficult one here, the top one. Here you really see the bends of the fingers. Let's attempt this. So I'm keeping it in the same proportion as the one we just drew. I'm starting with this oval padding and the thumb extension. So this is what we did over here. So this is the base shape and this is the thumb padding. And then I will draw the wrist. Now the thumb is extending across this base shape here till here. Again, this proportion you can see the padding and the thumb is equal. Now let's measure the fingers. So I can see that this arc is still maintained and this finger comes back down, folded close to the thumb. So now you can clearly see the 3 joints, 1, 2 and 3. Maybe I can extend this further. Now the next finger, here you can draw this arc. Once you know this finger is correct, in the correct position, you can again draw this arc which ends somewhere here. So the arc ends here and this is where the fingers will be. So let's draw the second finger. And this goes behind here. And the third finger overlaps. And it goes behind here. And the fourth is here. You start with the arc and then looking at the reference and the negative spaces. Like you can see that this is a space here, this is a space here, this is a space here. Notice these negative spaces to get your proportions right from the reference. Let's darken the lines. I'm starting with the thumb. So if you yourself see this reference image and start drawing, maybe you won't be able to get the proportions. So here what I'm showing the thought process, how to break it down so that you get the proportions right. So you practice in this way and then later on you can practice on your own. So I am making these observations and to get the proportions right. So see here the straight lines that you are able to see and the slight bulge here. and the bottom of the thumb is curved. So add these curves. So this shape basically repeats everywhere. You can see a bit of the knuckle here, so I'm adding this bulge even. And let's add the nails. Okay, this one was quite a difficult gesture. Okay, now let's draw some simplified hands, basically cartoon hands. Let's start with just this basic palm. But while cartoonizing it, first is we are reducing the realistic proportions, so it's not outstretched as much. And the second is, if we want, we can reduce the number of fingers, because that's just one less finger to draw, and you are able to do all gestures even with the limited fingers. So again, we start with the oval and the arc for the fingers and the thumb. So now we are just reducing the number of lines we are using for drawing the arm, the hand. And we can add the fingers. So if you see, the proportions are still the same. What I mean is, if we draw a knuckle here, this distance is still the same as this distance, and that makes the hand appealing. I will draw, actually drew from the top, so I will draw the other way, the palm facing outwards. Okay, I'm marking the arc here. You can even draw the glove. So you can just draw this way. And if you're drawing stick figures, you can add just this to the end and the thumb outstretched, and you can do gestures with it, and then you divide with the fingers. Okay, drawing your gestures as a glove first helps. So if I were to draw a fist, let's say we were drawing this fist. So I can just draw my oval here, the base, and the fingers closed up, and the thumb overlapping it. So this is the simplified fist, and then your wrist. And you can break it further, break down into the 3 fingers. So let's darken this. So we are reducing the number of lines required to draw a fist. This is just simplification. Let's draw from the reference here. Let's draw this one here. And while simplifying, adding these slight small lines signifies the bulges. So that is even helpful and adds detail. Starting with the circle and the arc for the glove and the outstretched thumb and the wrist. Okay. Now adding the bulge here. And let's darken it. See how many arcs are there in the cartoon hand. It's all smooth lines, smooth curves. I'll draw this one holding the pen, but then I'll draw the cartoon version of it. So if you compare the cartoon version, the fingers are shorter and there's a lot more curves. So I am just starting again with the base. I'll draw the thumb. And this finger here. And I'll draw the straight line for the pen. And these two fingers are visible here. And the wrist is going upward. Okay, so if you notice, I have not drawn directly from the reference. I have converted into sort of a cartoony version. I'll make this finger shorter. Just darken the lines. So this is how you use a realistic reference and convert it into your cartoon hands. Let's practice some more simple fists. So you see this one, it's from the behind, so we haven't drawn that one yet. I'm drawing the basic shape and the thumb and the wrist and the finger bulges, and that is it. We'll darken the lines. You need to practice a lot of these cartoon hands from references to be comfortable drawing arms and hands. And this one is an interesting one. Let's draw this, break it down. The base shape is this way. Then the thumb comes from here. So now I'm just using ovals to mark everything to get my proportions in place. And the rest comes from here. Let's darken this. You see the shape of the finger like this, it's still visible everywhere. So flat on the top and curved out on the bottom. I don't like this line connecting completely. This just shows that there's a bulge here. This is an interesting one because the thumb is very much exaggerated. I'm drawing this one. I will start with the oval and then draw the thumb extension. The wrist is going downwards. And this index finger is outstretched. I'm using all these arcs to capture the gesture. Let's ink it. Okay, now we have drawn very much similar arms. The hands first was realistic, then the cartoony. Now let's draw from this last reference that I have variations in drawing cartoon hands. Let's start with this hand here. Now these are all very stylized hands, and when you are able to draw different kinds of hands, it helps in your skills. So the basic structure is the same, but the stylization comes in picture. So this one I'm drawing a very much stubby hand. I'm marking the proportions here. The thumb and the fingers. You can draw a glove-like thing. And there's the very large wrist. Now let's define the thumb and the fingers. It's still a big finger. And look at how little this little finger is. It's barely any joints. Let's ink it. And adding the nail details. Okay, there's a similar kind of hand, but on the other side, from the other side. So let's draw that. Now see how wide the wrist is and how drastically you can change proportions. Club the fingers together before breaking them. You can make the thumb a bit smaller. Nose back on it. Now let's draw some very slender hand. Maybe this one. Here I'm going to draw this one. Now when the hand is so thin, you really need to enhance your details. Starting with this very thin oval with the thumb. And let's mark the fingers. The list is upturned, so it creates a corner here, and this is a smooth arc. Now inking this one is you have to add these slight changes and details, so the finger shape needs to be enhanced. and the points, the knuckles. I'm drawing this one. I like the flow of that one, so let's practice this. Back to the oval and the padding for the thumb and the thumb. I like this one because there is this arc and creates a flow, and the fingers also have this arc which is the opposite direction. I can enhance more, curve it outwards, and then let's add the details for the fingers. And I can see the padding here for the fingers as well, and the thumb is not that prominent. Add the 3 fingers here. Okay, let's ink it. I'm just refining my lines while I'm inking. That's the whole intention. I'm drawing this one. I'm just trying to find different gestures that we haven't drawn. Now here the thumb padding is visible along with the finger. And the wrist. Follow the arc for the fingers. And let's draw the individual fingers and break the silhouette. Drawing the arc is important to get all your fingers in line. Let's ink it. Let's add the nail details. This one is an interesting one. It shows how you need to overlap your fingers in different directions. So it's similar to what we just drew, but the finger positions are different. This one I'm drawing. So this time it's forming a triangle here. So I'm drawing the same thing. And then I'll draw the individual fingers. Let's ink it. Notice how the index finger is going this way. It's forming an arc in the opposite direction. Let's draw this last one here. So this is closed but not quite a fist. So this time this little finger is a bit outstretched and the rest are forming a solid shape. It helps to break the flow that when you're drawing fingers together, if you're drawing an outstretched arm, instead of drawing the four fingers together, you can break this apart and this just adds interest. So normally I think you have an example here. You see this one? This is a very standard Disney pose for the hands. You draw two fingers together and the little finger is not in the same line. So it just adds a bit of interest. Where did our reference go? Yeah, here. So inking this one. Okay, that is it. You have drawn a lot of hands today. If you have made it this far in this video, I'm sure you have liked this session and learned something from it. To learn more from me, check out my book which is available on my website, and give this video a big thumbs up so that I can make some more for you. Bye bye.